And thank you for joining us again at the Edwin Black Show. We're here to discuss my new book, Financing the Flames, and the troubling implications and information that it brings out about how certain taxpayer-supported organizations are facilitating a culture of confrontation in Israel, and how taxpayer money itself is actually funding terrorist salaries in Israeli prisons through the PA. So to discuss these issues, we have two of the most insightful observers of the Israeli sector. And we start with Juda Engelmayer in New York City. Juda is a correspondent for the Jewish Standard. He is a public relations specialist. He's a crisis management specialist. And he's here to talk about the impact this is having on Israel's image and what America can do about it. And we have back with us Marc Rauch from the Auto Channel in Sacramento, California, who is also very concerned with how Israel is losing the image war and about what it means for taxpayers to support this activity. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on the Edwin Black Show. We'll start with Juda. Juda, Israel increasingly has a very bad image when it comes to human rights. And Marc was under the impression before he read the book that this type of activity was being funded by Arab and oil interests. And now Marc is astonished to see that Jewish organizations are actually involved in some of this activity by funding groups that are disparaging and making it difficult for Israel to get a fair shake. What is your thought about the whole funding issue and what American Jewish organizations are doing to Israel and why?
Well, first I want Marc to be rest assured that Arab organizations are also doing it, and oil money is also paying for it. So you're okay over there on that fact. So that's not lost on us. But the most frightening aspect of what Edwin has accomplished in his book is uncovered what some people have suspected for a long time, but he's actually found the proof that there are left-wing organizations out there funded by some really well-known, well-networked, and even well-respected American Jewish leaders, quote-unquote, which serve to undermine Israel on a regular basis. In the attempt to, I guess, under the guise of creating peace, but more in the attempt of destroying Israel's Jewish way of life. And they think by making it non-sectarian and non-Jewish, they're going to cause a more peaceful place for Israel, for Jews in Israel to exist. What that really does, it destroys Israel, and that's what it's doing, and that's what it has been doing. And what it does is when people see Arab leaders attacking Israel, people who look at the situation can roll their eyes as though they expect it from those people. When respected Jews are doing it, all of a sudden people who are on the fence are saying, wow, if Jews feel that's bad, then Israel must be bad.
Now that's the key issue here, what Juda just said. If Jews are attacking Israel, then Israel must be bad. What do you say about that, Marc?
That, of course, is what happens. That is the word that's out there with Jewish people and non-Jewish people who think that. The reality, of course, is that Jewish people, not all, but many Jewish people, have great conscience, and therefore are concerned with social issues. And unfortunately, they're sometimes too concerned with those social issues to the detriment of themselves. It's almost as if the Jews have been suffering from 2 millennia of the Stockholm syndrome, right, where we're identifying with the aggressor and with what their claims are. But that's what happens, and that's how some of the Jews are, and unfortunately, that is one of the problems. And as I had said earlier, I think that how that manifests itself is that some of the best and the brightest of the Jewish people who are writers and spokespeople and media people, they're unfortunately working for the wrong side.
Are you saying that there's a double standard at play, that because these Jewish groups with the best of intentions are not willing to give Israel a fair shake, and they look the other way when the agitation groups go after Israel and sometimes facilitate this?
Sure. There's a situation, I think everybody went through this as kids, where you have an argument with your sibling and your parent steps in, and you say he started it, and the sibling says no, he started it, and so on. And the parent steps in and says, I don't care who started it, it's got to end, right? And so there are a lot of Jews who sort of take that position without understanding that it's not as simple as that. It's not a household kind of a thing where a parent can just step in and do that. And I think that when you look typically at a street demonstration, for example, like if something happens and there's going to be demonstrations against Israel, you'll have Jews demonstrating, you'll have Christians demonstrating, and you'll have Muslims demonstrating, and then other people who have no religious affiliation. But when it's something that's sort of against, when there's something and the argument and the demonstration, the street demonstration should be against what the Muslim communities are doing against the rest of the world or against Israel. You have Jews, you'll have Christians, you'll have non-aligned people, but you don't have a lot of Muslims who come out. And so the image to the person who's trying to understand what this is all about says, well, look, if the Jews are arguing against it, then maybe the Arabs have something are correct in the argument.
All right, now Judah, why is this segment of the Jewish community, which is quite visible, agitating against the Jewish state and its Jewish identity, and how much of the community is represented by this disaffected but very powerful and well-financed group?
How much is a hard question to answer, because I can say that I'd like to say it's a small amount of people, but I don't really know that for sure, because a lot of it comes out of the liberal side of the Jewish community, which is more on the reform and conservative sides, and as well as a lot of the unaffiliated Jews who are Jews by birth and by name, who are so assimilated into American culture, they see Israel as maybe a problem for them and something they just want to be away with. But Mark mentioned something earlier in his retort, which was very interesting. He said Jews have a Stockholm syndrome like effect, and it's in some cases you do see that. The old Jewish guilt grandmother thing that we always hear. Jews have a hard time accepting the fact that in this world, in the past 2 centuries, Jews have become more successful than they've been in a long time. They've had more freedoms, and as a result, look at America. They're represented in government pretty well, represented in business pretty well, and what that leads to is a sense of identification. The more attention being brought to Jews, and on the bad things that they do, Jewish people who aren't as proud to be Jews, aren't as proud of Israel, so to speak, will cower in a sense to themselves and say, I really don't like seeing Jews represented that way. We're not supposed to be out there. We're not supposed to be that way. And they hold Jews to a standard of we're the quote-unquote chosen people. We should be better. We should be different. And if we're not, we're going to come out against you completely. You see all these groups come out against Israel and claim human rights violations one after the other. And these people who claim human rights violations never once look at the people that they're defending and seeing what kind of human rights violations that occur in their own lands. And not to say that one is better than the other, but you don't see them having big campaigns for human rights in Palestine, human rights in Syria, human rights in Saudi Arabia. Where are these people that come out for Israel? Because Israel's easy to attack their own people. Israel allows the freedom of the press, so you can get that news out there, and Israel won't retaliate by beheading your parents and your children and your families, so you can say whatever you want. Whereas you can't go to the other world and do that. I liken it almost to a group that I pay attention to in California, in San Francisco, gays for Palestine, and they're so angry at the Jewish community. I just want them to go in the center of Ramallah and promote themselves and see what kind of reaction they get. But you see, they don't see it that way. They just think that Jews shouldn't be strong. Jews shouldn't have their own country. Jews shouldn't be in a position of power, and everyone else is okay. And once Jews aren't around, then we'll worry about everybody else's problem. And it's an intense guilt feeling they have for being successful, for being where they are, and for feeling that we don't deserve to be that way, or some just feel that, yes.
Well, how do we detach this this attitude by a small group of Jewish individuals from taxpayer money? That's what this is about. In other words, it's one thing for these Jewish groups to say, I oppose a Jewish identity in a Jewish state, or to fund groups who say, we oppose a Jewish identity in a Jewish state. How do we stop U.S. taxpayers from paying $440,000 for every $1 million in tax-deductible donations? How do we do that?
Well, it's not a very simple question to answer, because, as you know, the money trail it's not simple to track the way you're saying it is. When a congressman votes to support some organization out there on the right or on the left, wherever, or overseas somewhere, what they end up doing is sending money, thinking or hoping that it's going to a government for some human rights, for food, for shelter, for whatever it is going to be going for. And once it actually gets broken down and given out in that country where it's supposed to be, no one's paying attention anymore. That's why works like yours have become more and more important to really expose that money line and expose where the money's going, how it's getting spent, and when that money gets into the hands of the first person that the government writes the check to, where it gets disseminated from there. And I think very often we lose focus of that. We don't pay as much attention, and it's not as sexy. It's great to say that we're giving money to help all these disaffected nations around the world, and that's where our politicians draw the line. They're really not going to get involved, go into those countries, and understand how that money's being spent, because it was a campaign flow. They could say they voted to help people, and that's it. They have too much on their plate to worry about it. So
all
people
right, now,
like
Judah, you are a media specialist. That is what you do for a living. Why is, I don't want to even use the word mainstream media, why is the media at large missing this story, missing the story that taxpayer money going to the PA, 6% of it is paying terrorist salaries in prison, missing the story that agitators are, in some cases, and protesters are being compensated to protest, missing the fact that organizations are getting millions of dollars to foment confrontation, but when Palestinians want to work together, that has to be done in the shadows. Why is the media missed this variety of important messages?
Well, I will give you a very simplistic answer, which people who are watching the show might roll their eyes at and say that I'm just a right-wing lunatic. But a large portion of the media, not a large, but a significant percentage of the media are made up of liberal Jews, all from every sector, people whose families escaped from the Holocaust and now they're very assimilated into American society, and they run the systems that end up translating to what we call news today. And they're putting their own apologist views and ideologies into the news, into the program. And when someone actually proves to them and shows them where they're wrong, they turn down. They don't want to see it. They turn it off because they want their dialogue. They want their paradigm to be shown. And if you show them something different, all of a sudden it's not important anymore. How many times have you seen, like in the New York Times or the Washington Post, when a first-page story on something Israel did was wrong, and then 5 weeks later, when it was proven that it was all a hoax, it was on page 28 on 3 sentences? Because they're not going to put that on the front page anymore, because they were very, very happy to promote their own ideology. Once their ideology was proven wrong, we got it for journalistic purpose. We have to put it in there, but we don't really want to.
All right, we're out of time. Thank you very much, Marc Rauch in Sacramento, California, Juda Engelmayer in New York. This is Edwin Black. We're going to be right back with another session on financing the flames. Stay tuned.